History is woven in many threads, carving down many different paths, and some of these threads contain the path of conquerors, kings, and saints. But beneath the warp and web of these celebrated lives, there are other threads, darker, older, and steeped in a silence born of terror. And these are the chronicles of things that should not be, of powers that defy the mortal comprehension. And our account of one such thread, it does not begin in the throne room or on a battlefield, but in a place of utter damnation, and a wound in a world festering deep below the holy city of Jerusalem. They call it the Pit of Mob, a maze of impassable corridors and passageways, where stone arches, fragile as bone, open onto cliffs that plunge into the absolute silent darkness. It is a place that defies cartography, a three-dimensional nightmare where one could wander for an eternity. Here the very air is a poison and the silence is a lie, for the pit is never truly quiet. It whispers, it remembers, and on this day, after an age of slumber, something within its depths began to stir. And in those depths, we would see a figure with no name. And all we could see was the darkness and the red of her eyes, curled at the base of a monolithic pillar. A physically striking woman, but would tend to appear small and vulnerable in the immense darkness, with wide eyes reflecting a deep, primal fear. Her breathing was shallow, and the whispers in the background grew slightly more distinct, like a hiss, overlapping voices speaking in the forgotten tongue. And in this casual backdrop of nothingness, she would think a frantic storm, and her voice would be soft and laced with a trembling panic. What is this place? Cold? The stone bites through these rags of air. It smells of dust and old blood. So much blood. I can feel it, a river of it nearby. A toxic, screaming river. But how do I know that? How do I know its touch is poison? I know nothing. In the filaments of the darkness, she would palm her temples to try and get some flicker of a memory. But of course the flicker would come searingly bright and violent, and it would flash behind her eyes. She would see cities engulfed in flame, the sound of 1,000 screams, and the wet tearing of flesh. No, not that. Anything but that. The fire, the screams, my hands, they were... No. There's nothing before the cold stone. Nothing. I am nothing. I have no name. No history. Just this and the whispers. They promise answers. They promise power. And they hiss such sweet, terrible things when I listen. But yet, she was not entirely alone in the dark. Those who had found her, a small grim cohort calling themselves the Order of the Dreadful Knights, would keep their distance. They saw before them a being of immense potential, an ancient power awakened. They could not see the terrified child lost in the ruins of her own mind, and they would watch her, waiting for a sign and a command. And at once a knight from the order, clad in the dark armor, would hesitatingly take a step forward, large and battle-scarred. He will stop, of course, at a respectful 10 paces. My lady, are you well? We have secured the passage. There is no immediate danger. And the unnamed would flinch at the sound of his voice. She would peek at him from behind the pillar. Her expression a mask of shyness, its timidity so extreme it seemed almost painful, but beneath it, a different emotion flickered in her eyes, a cold, analytical curiosity. And in that, the panic would recede and it would be replaced by something quiet, possessive, and chillingly serene. He speaks to me. He is one of mine, though I do not know how. Such a strong form loyal, he would die for me, I can feel it. He wants to die for me, he just doesn't know it yet. It's sweet, but he is loud. He breaks the quiet, and I don't like it when they break the quiet without my permission. And outwardly, the knight could only see her shake her head. It would be a tiny and almost imperceptible motion, and she would shrink further back into the shadows. And the knight, taking this as a sign to withdraw, would give a stiff bow and retreat to join his fellows. And the unnamed would watch him go. A faint, almost invisible smile would grace her lips before vanishing. This dichotomy would come to define her existence. An exterior of crippling shyness, a fragile shell concealing a core, absolute, predatory certainty. This was not mere deception, no. In the shattered landscape of her mind, both were true. She was the terrified child and the ageless predator, locked in a horrifying embrace. And driven by an impulse that she doesn't understand, she would move and drift through the tunnels. And her followers, of course, the Order, they would trail behind like specters. She would ignore them and draw deeper into the labyrinth by the incessant whisperings, and her movements were unnervingly silent. Eventually, she would arrive in a chamber whose walls are covered from the floor to ceiling in grotesque chalky symbols. This was the room of the scrawling, a place where lesser minds would shatter, and the maddening images were a psychic assault designed to break any who would dare to decipher them. And as they approached this room in the halls of Jerusalem, the knight would avert their eyes and mutter prayers or curses, but the unnamed would stare directly at such walls. She would trace the symbols with her eyes, with a complex sigil of agony and domination. And her softness in her voice would be replaced by a pure, cold sadism. It was like a voice of discovery that she was coming home. These marks, they don't hurt. Such a beautiful song of pain, it feels familiar. It feels right. And these lines speak of power, of the makings of the world bend and break and will scream your name. But I don't have a name. How can they scream a name I do not have? That's a problem. We must fix this problem. They must have something to scream. And in that moment, a new resolve would harden her expression, and the fear would be gone, burned away by this newfound purpose, and she would turn away from the walls, and her gaze would sweep over her followers. And in that moment, it appeared not just of a small girl, a small vampiric child, but she would grow into a very lanky creature. And for the first time, she truly would see them not as protectors, but as tools and instruments, hers. They are a beginning, a weapon to be forged, an order, but they are aimless, and a warrior band without a common purpose is just rabble. They need a pillar. They need goals. My goals. And at the sight, she would slide to the center of the room, and the dreadful knight would turn to face her, sensing the change. Her shyness would return, but now it would seem different. A deliberate veil than a genuine state. And she kept her eyes downcast, and she would speak with a whisper, but it would cut through the oppressive silence. Purpose. An order needs purpose. We are yours to command, my lady. We are the Order of the Dreadful Knights, and our purpose is to serve you. She would make a soft hushing sound. Shh. And the man would instantly fall silent with a look of confusion, and she would circle him slowly and look at the ground and not directly at his eyes. A fine name, but it is not my name. Not my order, not yet. We will build a new one. On a new foundation, we will be holy warriors. And that murmur would run through the nights, and the term would seem incongruous and nearly blasphemous coming from a creature of the dark. She sensed their confusion and flickered a cruel smile would touch her lips again, hidden by the curtain of her hair. Holy, such a lovely, deceptive word. A shield to hide the blade. They will see piety and righteousness, but they will never see the devil pulling the strings. My devil. And we will have standards. Not every whelp who can swing a sword is worthy. Mortals are messy. No, our ranks will be exclusive. Only the best may serve me. And her gaze would drift past the knights to the shadows at the edge of the torch, as if looking at the other souls, the other candidates she wished to collect. And it will be only the ones I choose, the perfect ones, the ones who will belong to me and me alone forever. And she would stop pacing and look up, but not at them. Instead, her eyes would be fixed on the oppressive darkness of the ceiling above, as if addressing the pit itself. Her voice would remain a whisper, but it would carry an authority of absoluteness. We will not be a bludgeon, we will be a scalpel. We will need the finest of men and knights, elite. We will move in the shadows and re-meet the world from within. This is my will, and this is our purpose. And the knights will stand motionless, captivated. The shy and lost creature they found was gone, and in her place stands something more terrifying. A commander. A master. A being who had taken the first step out of the abyss of amnesia and on a path of her own making. And it will be paved with deceit and a hunger for domination. And it was a declaration born in madness deep within the bowels of the earth. And her order would be elegant, elite, sworn to a nameless, shy, and sadistic mistress of the night. It was a contradiction of paradox, an act of irony, but it was only the beginning, for now she had found a purpose, and she would rediscover her appetites and seek to find her original identity. A purpose found is a ravenous thing for the being who has no name. The declaration made in the dark heart of the pit was a rebirth, and she had to find her order, and in doing so had laid the first stone of a new identity. But an order is a body, and a body requires blood. Her followers, the grim survivors, were just the bones, and now she required flesh, sinew, and a will to mold into her own. And her first act, upon emerging from the depths of Jerusalem, was not power or influence, but to visit the place where the desperate and the forgotten would gather. She would hide herself in the bumbling places of various taverns. We would go into the rolls of the cups, and she would sit alone, of course, in the shadowy corners. And a cup of water would be before her, and her followers would be positioned discreetly near entrances watching. She would appear timid and hunched over the cup, avoiding all eye contact, but her senses were fully extended, tasting the emotional currents of the area. So much life, so much noise. It presses on all sides. Fear, greed, despair. It's a symphony. Most are flawed, broken instruments. That one, a guard full of cheap pride and sour wine. That merchant, his thoughts slick with avarice. Useless. I need something with a spark and a mind that can be polished. And her gaze would shift to a young woman by the name of Nostaron, sitting by herself near the hearth. A plainly dressed woman, but her eyes sharp, intelligent, and she will be absorbed in a small worn book. Ah, there! See how she holds herself apart? See how she devours those words, hungry for a world beyond this grime? She understands that knowledge is power. Oh, she has such untapped potential. And she doesn't belong here. She belongs to me. She doesn't know it yet, but she will be my first perfect little doll. And it was in that moment the hunt would begin. Not a hunt for sustenance, not yet, but simply for a piece of her collection. And as her focus would narrow on her prize, another hunger, ancient and absolute, would stir. The deep need for blood. And she would follow along a burly, drunken man as he would stumble towards the exit. A man reeked of poverty and desperation. The Unnamed's eyes would flicker towards him for the barest of seconds, and she would begin her move. A small detour, a snap. It wouldn't do to be distracted by thirst when I begin my work. This one will suffice. No one will miss him. It is the safest way. My way. And she will rise from her chamber and go, a shadow detaching from the deeper shadows, and she will move with an unnerving grace, and her shyness would be a cloak that rendered her invisible. She would slip out the tavern moments after the man followed, while her remaining followers would stay behind, knowing better than to intervene in her work. And the night would swallow her whole. And in the alleyway, the unknown man would be fumbling against the wall, trying to get his bearings, but the sound of grumbling and a distant hum. The Unnamed would appear at the mouth of the alley. She would not stride or stalk, but would simply be there. And then the man would sense this presence and turn. "Who's there? Show yourself!" And she would take a single step. Her demeanor of shyness would be gone, replaced by the eerie and almost curious placidity. And she would tilt her head and you would just see a sweet smile. That the predator is unmasked. They always ask that. Who's there? As if a name would save them. As if knowing would lessen the terror. It's the not knowing that's the most delicious part. The fear. It seasons the blood so perfectly. "Stay back! I'm warning ya!" But she would close the distance before he could even pull his rusty dagger. And in a moment too fast for the eyes to follow, she was one moment at the alley's entrance, and then the next she would be before him, her hand resting gently on his chest. His dagger would clatter to the ground, his eyes shocked in disbelief. "Shh. There, no need for that. It will be over soon, just a little pinch." And her smile would widen, revealing the second points of her fangs, and the attack will be not of a frenzy, but a thing of terrifying precision. In its intimate and cruel nature, she doesn't tear his throat out, but she embraces him, pulling him close as if for a dance. And her head would rest on his shoulder as his body convulses and then goes limp. She holds him for a moment longer, her eyes closed in rapture, a single tear of blood tracing down the path of her cheek. Yes, this is what I was missing. The warmth, the life, the final silent screams in the veins. This is who I am. The body she would leave as a discarded husk, and the disorientation and weakness she would feel were gone and burned away by the fresh vitae. She would be strong and clear. But while the nameless predator rediscovered her nature, the very city around her was growing sick with the fear she had inadvertently caused. Jerusalem was not just a mortal city, but a nexus of Canaanite politics and a powder keg of ancient hatreds and fragile alliances. And at its heart was the Diet of Olives, a pact between various princes in a desperate attempt to hold the line against the abyss. And we will see ourselves in a chamber gathering of the latent vampire princes. And their leader would slam her fists onto the table. "We have confirmation. She was found in the pit of the mob, the order of the dreadful knights. What's left of them serve her. She matches the description." A Bali? One of the first 3 here in our city? It's a catastrophe. Do you know what her presence invites? The very forces that swallowed Damascus are at our door. To the princes of the Levant, the name Bali was a curse. It spoke of infernalism, of soul-selling, of world-ending pacts with demons named the Shadim. They were the line of walking calamities in the unnamed simply by existing, by carrying the blood of the rumored third progenitor of that despised clan was a lit fuse. She did not even need to act. Her reputation, a legacy of terror that she couldn't even remember, was a potent weapon. I do not care if she has done nothing. She is something. She is a beacon for the mad and a terror for the sane. Her presence destabilizes everything. Every Canaanite in the city is on a knife's edge, and I have already put down 2 cults that sprang up overnight to worship her. She is a plague. Then we must act. Destroy her and her followers before she can. No! To attack a being of her fabled power is to invite a war we cannot win. A war that will bring all of Jerusalem clashing down upon us. We will not make her a martyr. We will make her an outcast. And the missive was sent. We will return back to the unnamed in her tavern. Well on her work, she would sit back in the corner sipping her water, the picture of shy innocence, and she would watch Nastaran, who is preparing to leave. The unnamed's mind is filled with possessive, wonderful plans for her new recruit, but then a knight approaches her table and kneels. My lady, a decree has been issued from the prince. In her hands would take the rolled scroll. Her movements slow and delicate. She would unroll it and scan with a formal look. And in her own thoughts, the possessiveness now certainly returns, tinged with an annoyance. Expelled? You have outstayed your welcome here? How rude! I haven't even had the chance to play. And just when I found my perfect toy, they fear me. They fear a name they only whisper. Good. Fear is a start, but they are interrupting my collection. That cannot be forgiven. And she will look back at Nastaran, who was walking to the door, and a slow smile will form on her lips. They can expel me from their city. They can call me a calamity. It doesn't matter. I will leave, but I will not leave empty-handed. And she would glide towards the exit, as a predator whose hunts has been inconvenienced but not deterred, as everything will inevitably fade to black. An expulsion from a place like Jerusalem would be the end for many. To be declared a pariah by the Canaanite princes of the Levant was a death sentence delivered on the wind. But the unnamed was not many, and her departure was no frantic headlong flight. It was strategic, an inconvenience that had merely been accelerated, a desire already of the blooming in the void of her mind. She needed to see this new world, this age that had moved on without her, and she needed to understand the board before she could begin to flip the table. We would open in the dusty roads north of Judea, south of Judea. The unnamed company will move under the pale light of the crescent moon. There will be no sense of panic, but a quietly efficient, planned exodus. And the unnamed would walk near the head of the column, and her posture would no longer be timid, but radiate a quiet, absolute authority. And of course, beside her, walking with a steady gait that belies any sense of fear, is Nastaran. She is no longer a simple warrior scholar from the tavern. There is a new light in her eyes, not of terror, but of dark fascination. and she watches the unnamed with an unnerving intensity. They were afraid of you. The rulers of that city, I saw it in the guards who delivered the proclamation. They spoke of your title like it was a curse. The unnamed would not look at Nosteron. Her gaze would be fixed on the horizon, and with a soft murmur she would speak. Fear is a tool, nothing more. Theirs was premature. They fear what you are, a Bali. I read of your clan in my books. They called your progenitors demons. They said your kind made pacts with things from the outside world to gain power. And the unnamed would stop walking, the entire column in a halt. She would turn to face Nosteron, and her expression unreadable in the moonlight. For the first time, she truly studied the woman she took. She speaks of it without trembling. She looked into the abyss and it did not drive her mad. It intrigued her, yes, the spark I saw. It was not just intelligence, it was a kindred shadow. I chose well. Most would flee from such a name. They would beg for release. You did not. You followed me from that tavern as if you were coming home. Why? Nosteron would meet her gaze without flinching, and she would have another smile across her face, mirroring the predator's smile that the unnamed would wear so often. In this hidden darkness it would be revealed. The world they have is built on lies. The piety of priests who sin in secret, the justice of lords who prey on the weak. It is a rot, hidden beneath a thin veneer of order. Your clan, from what I read, you do not hide. You are the truth. The honest rot. The honest fire that burns the lies away. I've been waiting for a fire like you my entire life. It was a profound silence that hung between them. The unnamed would feel a sensation she could not identify with, but a strange resonance would form with the mortal. A shared worldview, a shared hunger for a more authentic, if more terrible reality. She understands. She is innocent. She is simply untested. Oh, the things we will teach each other. She is worthy. She will be the first to receive the embrace. My first true child. And this connection, this first bond of her new existence would be solidified. It also threw in her own deficiencies into a sharp relief. Nosteron knew of Bali. She knew of the legends. She knew more of the unnamed supposed history than the unnamed did herself. And that amnesia was not just a missing past. It was a leash, a metaphysical chain that kept her from her own power. And of course, the camp would continue for many days, and the days would be a blur from a steady march. And various indignities and matters of disrespect would occur, but they are but small annoyances to the greater plan. And the true struggle that the unnamed would brace would be that of an internal one. I am a ghost, a whisper. I have a legacy but no memory. I have followers and soon I will have a child, but I do not have a name. They follow the idea of me. Nosteron is drawn to the legend of me. But I am not here. Just this empty space. I can feel the power coiled inside of me like a sleeping serpent, but it is sluggish, and it answers my call like a half-dead servant. This weakness, this is the true prison, not the pit. Not some princeling's decree, this emptiness. And then as she thinks on her own circumstances, the path forward will illuminate. Naming the unnameable. A quest. The Order of the Dreadful Knights They knew me of before, but maybe I should seek more outward and nurture it and perhaps lift the veil. Through a long and arduous road I will require many followers, and I will need to launch many schemes to grasp our current circumstance, but it is the only road I can take. I cannot build an empire on a foundation of whispers and forgotten nightmares. I must know who I was, and I must know what I am. I must have my name. And in the lonely desert, under the canopy of the cold stars, her journey was not of an escape but a pilgrimage, a hunt not for blood, not for followers, but for the most elusive prize, herself. And she will follow these fragmented clues and walk the ashen road to endure any trial and pay any price, and claw her way from the abyss of amnesia, because she understood the fundamental truth of the world. You cannot conquer the world if you have not first conquered yourself. You cannot make them scream your name if you do not have one to give them.